Have you ever Googled a symptom? Yeah, of course you have. We all do it. And you're instantly just flooded with articles and forums and all kinds of advice. But in that huge sea of information, how can you possibly know what's a life raft of truth and what's just, noise? So let's get into this because it turns out the experts have a system, and we're about to lay out that map for you. And just to get a sense of the scale we're talking about, look at this number. 3.3 billion. That's how many health-related searches the U.S. National Library of Medicine alone handles every single year. It's clear we are all out there looking for answers, and the internet, well, it's our first stop. And that really brings us to the big question for this whole explainer, right? When you're staring at an endless scroll of medical advice and a lot of it conflicts, how do you find your way? How do you actually separate the credible, solid information from everything else? Well, here's the secret. There's a map. Seriously, health professionals, they don't just search around randomly hoping to find something good. They follow a very structured path to find reliable answers. And today, we're going to share that exact map with you. This quote from our source material really just nails it. Before you can even think about finding the right answer, you have to know where to look in the first place. See, it's not about finding any answer, it's about finding the best quality answer. And that all starts with knowing your resources. So this is the map. It's a 3-tiered pyramid, a 3-step path that experts use. They usually start at the top with tertiary resources. Those are the big, broad summaries. If they need more, they move down to secondary resources, which are like guides to find specific studies. And for the deepest dive, they go all the way to the foundation, primary resources, the original research itself. All right, let's start our journey at the top of that pyramid. Tier 1 is all about tertiary resources. This is probably where you start your search already, and honestly, for very good reason. The best way to think about a tertiary resource is like an encyclopedia entry for a health topic. It's where somebody, an expert, has already done the heavy lifting for you. They've sifted through all the original studies, they've pulled out the most important findings, and they've put it all together in a nice, convenient summary. And you've definitely seen these around, even if you didn't call them that. We're talking about things like textbooks, those super detailed drug databases your pharmacist uses, and of course, those really reputable health websites like the Mayo Clinic or the CDC. Their whole job is to give you a solid, trustworthy overview. But here's the really interesting part. There's a trade-off. Tertiary resources are amazing starting points, right? They're fast, they're easy to use. But that convenience comes at a price. The information can sometimes be a little outdated. There's always a chance for an author's bias to creep in, and they just might not have the nitty-gritty detail you need for a really complex question. So what happens when that encyclopedia entry just isn't enough? Well, you go one level deeper. You become a detective. And this is where we get into the world of secondary resources. The digital card catalog is the perfect way to think about this. These resources, they don't actually give you the full answer themselves. Instead, they're these massive searchable indexes that just point you in the right direction. You tell it what you're looking for, and it gives you a list of the exact studies and articles you need to read. You might even recognize a few of these names. PubMed and Google Scholar, for instance, are two of the most powerful ones out there, and they're free to use. They index millions upon millions of biomedical articles, which makes them just incredible tools for finding specific research. Now, to really use these databases well, you kind of have to learn to speak their language, and that language uses something called Boolean operators. It sounds complicated, but it's not. All it is using simple words like and, or, and not to give the search engine super specific instructions. And narrows things down, or broadens them, and not lets you exclude stuff. And this is a perfect example of how it works in the real world. Say you're researching 2 specific cancer drugs for lymphoma. You can tell the database, hey, show me articles that mention either this first drug or the second drug, but they absolutely must also mention lymphoma. It's just a way to cut through the noise and get incredibly precise results. And that brings us to the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of all medical knowledge. If you really want to get down to the evidence, you have to go to the primary resources. You have to go straight to the source. So what is a primary resource?
Imagine a scientist's original lab notebook, just published for the entire world to see. That's what these are. They're the clinical trials, the lab reports, the raw data. This is where brand new knowledge makes its debut, totally unfiltered, before it's been summarized or interpreted by anyone else.
This kind of research comes in a lot of different flavors, and each one is designed to answer a different kind of question. You've got these huge, controlled trials with thousands of people to test a new drug. But you also have these super detailed case reports that might be about a rare side effect in just one single patient. Every single one is a valuable piece of the overall puzzle. And here's why this is so important. This is the crucial takeaway about primary literature. It lets you be the judge. You can actually look at how a study was designed, you can see who was in it, and check how they analyzed the data. And then you can decide for yourself if you think the conclusions hold up. Okay, but a really critical word of warning here. Reading these studies is a skill. It takes time and practice. Without understanding research methods, it is incredibly easy to misinterpret the results or to get hung up on one single study without seeing the bigger picture. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is great for doctors, but what about me? Well, here's the thing. This map, this whole framework, it's not just for professionals. It is a really powerful tool for anyone who's just trying to make sense of health information online. Because now you have a mental model you can use to evaluate everything you read. When you land on some health website, you can ask yourself, wait, is this a tertiary source? Is it just a summary? Or are they actually pointing me to the primary research? It completely changes how you look at the information in front of you. Here is a super simple checklist you can use every single time. First, ask, who runs this site? Is it a government agency or a university, or is it a company that's trying to sell me something? Second, check the date. Is this info current? Old medical advice can be useless or even harmful. And third, and this one is key, do they have references? Good, trustworthy sites will always cite their sources. And if you're just looking for some really solid places to start your search, these are some of the best tertiary resources out there for the public. Government sites like Medline Plus, the CDC, and the FDA are fantastic. So are the websites from major hospitals and trusted nonprofits like the American Heart Association. So the next time you find yourself falling down that late-night symptom rabbit hole on the internet, remember, you have a map now. You won't just be searching for an answer, you'll be evaluating the quality of that answer. You'll be a more empowered, more savvy, and way more confident health consumer. Because the most important thing is, now you know what to look for.